He leaves the academy, founds his own school, the Lyceum. He invents a new logic. He invents, dialectical topics. He invents the categories. He invents the syllogism and all this stuff in the context of the Lyceum. Aristotle becomes the tutor to Alexander of Macedonia. Alexander then, as a young man, as we all know, conquers the known world, spreads Greek institutions throughout that area, ultimately with the library at Alexandria being this enormous center of learning for the ancient world, and the universities are now the direct heirs of the research institutions in Alexandria. So that comes directly out of the Greek miracle, as they say. Well, so that was the institutional practices. As we said, then the subject formation or identity formation of literacy is at the individual level the experience of selfhood. The idea, and what the historians say, like Eric Havelock and others say about the experience of literacy, is that that for the first time, as people learned to read, and then read to themselves and began to use the methodologies of logic, of analysis, they started noticing contradictions. They could visually screen the information, divide it up into tables, create all kinds of indexing and comparisons and so forth. That technological processing of the written word, capturing the flow of speech and visualizing it in these spatial structures, had a profound impact on people's experience of themselves. And specifically, what happened was that thought was, for the first time, experienced as coming from inside the person. So the very word psyche, to name self, means the ghost in me. So that ghost, that spirit that, say, Black Elk or a shaman or an oral person would experience as coming from the outside, for a literate person, that ghost, that voice moves inside, becomes a voice coming from inside. For the oral Greeks, the idea was that thought came from the chest. I mean, it was the heart was the seat of thinking. Because why? Because you're an action-oriented. The civilization of the heroes. You're in battle or you're in an argument. You're dealing with the world, and your heart is pounding because you're excited. You're in action, or you're working emotionally. And the idea that then what happens with literacy, of course, Plato with his tripartite division puts the head as the seat of as the leadership. The philosopher king, is the head. The head is the location of mentality. The heart is now associated with the guardians and courage and so forth, and then the viscera associated with the lower, with the working class and emotion and all the bodily things. So collectively, so in terms of subject formation, there's the individual experience of selfhood, and the collectivity, the organization of collective identity at that level is with democracy. So you've got the idea, ultimately leading to the nation state, which is a specifically print institution. Benedict Anderson, in his important book, Imagined Communities, shows a direct connection between print literacy and the formation of the nation state. That is, for a collective entity of that magnitude, of that scope, to be made coherent and hold together, what's required is a written word. First, in terms of the high literacy figures inventing the written language. So Luther invents the modern German, Cervantes invents modern Spanish, and so on. This was the idea that the high literate people invented the native language, the native written language, and then journalism, as that evolved, as learning spread and more people became literate, that created the possibilities for a democratic society. So that's the structure of literacy. Now, being aware of this shift from morality to literacy is very important historically, because a lot of people now, as they look at the new media, the whole notion of the society of the spectacle could be compared to the equivalent of it in orality and literacy would be the point of view of a religious or of an oral person looking at the coming of science. So, like, for example, in high schools, they assign this book by Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart. Well, Things Fall Apart is a really interesting book because it's told from the oral point of view about the coming of European Christian literate civilization. And it's a disaster. I mean, things fall apart. It's the end of the world as far as these oral people are concerned. And indeed, the entire story of colonialism is the story of what happens when an oral civilization encounters a written civilization of writing. And what happens is a civilization of writing enslaves and commits genocide against the oral civilization. I mean, that's what happened historically. So it's a nightmare. It's just told from the point of view of orality. Literacy is a nightmare. Well, what's happening today in films like The Matrix or in the theory of the spectacle is that's electracy viewed from the point of view of literacy. Well, what grammatology does is say, look, it's not that bad. It's bad. I mean, there's definitely things are going to change, and we have to imagine that change, and we have to participate. There's no, and this is the key, there's no inevitability. There's no technological determinism that's going to make electricity come out a certain way. It's going to depend on who invents it, and what are the equivalents. So in terms of the technology, in terms of the apparatus, the technological equivalent of the alphabetic and then printed word is the digital image. Specifically, the fact that now we can record not only the stream of the voice going by, and what did the Greeks do? What is the first thing the Greeks did with alphabetic writing? They wrote down their epics. So the epic was sung. It was a performance generated improvisatorially by the singer. It was never told the same way twice. A huge part of it was the singing, the voice and the tone and all the performance theatrical parts of it. Well, all of that was lost, and that's a huge sacrifice, obviously. But what was gained had nothing to do with the epic. What was gained was the invention of philosophy. Out of that stream of words going by, the Greek scientists invented science. I mean, so what we lost was the performance of the epic. What we gained was science. We have to look at it that way, and that's quite a trade-off. So something lost, something gained. Well, similarly with electricity, now we need to say, all right, the new possibility of electricity with digital imaging is now we can record not simply the stream of voice going by only, but we can record the whole body. So we don't just record the voice of the speaker, we record their physical appearance, their behavior, their action, the tone of their voice, all of that, plus everything around them, along with the capacity of computing to stream in all kinds of digital information, numerical data of other kinds as well. But the key for us in electricity is to think, all right, now we have a new recording possibility to record the whole body. So what are the possibilities of that? Now, again, to take what happened historically, you just can't invent this out of whole cloth. I mean, you need to, the way grammatology works is you look at the historical examples and then you trace the analogies. And they're loose, they're heuristic. I mean, that rule of thumb, I mean, do they work? They give you ideas. So for, to make this analogy, again, what happened with print, say, what was the first thing people did with print? Well, this is where McLuhan's formula is right, that the old media are the content of the new media. So the manuscript Bible was printed up, just like the oral epic was written down. Took the manuscript Bible, printed it, many, many copies as the first thing. That made the Protestant Reformation possible, because the whole point of the Protestant Reformation is each person is or her own priest. Well, you can't be your own priest if you don't have a Bible. So you got a Bible, now you can be your own priest, because you can actually have, the manuscript Bibles were priceless, and there were very few of them. But then it got more democratic. Books are very expensive still for a while, but it became possible to have a book, have your own copy. Same thing.